down in that Mariana Trench.
Until recently, more human beings have flown to the moon than have dived to the deepest spot on Earth. Now, thanks to a singular feat of engineering, that is no longer true. It's called the limiting factor, and it looks like something out of a Pixar movie. But this sub is no cartoon. Earlier this summer, CBS Sunday Morning correspondent Lee Cowan joined an expedition to the Mariana Trench in the Western Pacific to see a vehicle that some are calling the space shuttle of the deep blue sea.
When you see our big blue marble from space, it's striking, really. We are so much more surf than turf. And yet even today, so many of our oceans remain largely a mystery. The stuff of tall tales of sea monsters and sunken treasure, and daring adventures to the bottom.
I'll never forget the Disney version of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. Are you kidding? That probably put the kernel of the idea of like saying, yeah, I want a submarine one day. Why not?
For most people, that childhood fantasy would be crushed by the weight of adulthood. But not for Texas adventurer and explorer Victor Vescovo. In 2016, he set about an around-the-world first to dive to the deepest parts of all 5 of our oceans.
How could this be that it's the year 2016 and we've never been to the bottom of 4 of our world's oceans?
Nobody.
No one.
Part of the problem is there simply wasn't a manned vehicle capable of multiple dives to depths that deep. Not even the U.S. military has won that request. So Vescovo built his own, forged in fire. He called it limiting factor.
Okay, yeah, it's hard, but I thought that would be an amazing technological challenge in a great adventure.
Anything deeper than 20,000 feet is known as the Hadel Zone, a reference to Hades, the Greek god of the underworld. It only makes up a tiny fraction of our oceans, about 2%. And that can make funding a trip to the bottom a pretty hard sell for the bottom line.
So when you go to the accountants and you say, I need all this money to get that extra 2%, they say, no, you don't.
Australian sub-pilot and engineer Tim McDonald had never heard of someone financing a submarine by themselves, but Vescovo, who had made a fortune in private equity, not only had the interest, but pockets deep enough for the deep.
Once you're comfortable, I think there's a strong urge to try and do something helpful for the rest of humanity, and just the area that I've chosen is ocean exploration.
He partnered with Triton Submarine, a small manufacturer in Vero Beach, Florida, who took on the challenge to make a sub that could dive to almost unlimited depths, over and over and over again, like a space shuttle to the bottom of the world. The first task was to design a hull that could withstand the weight of about 20 fully loaded 747s stacked on top of it. That's how much water weight would try to squeeze its occupants into oblivion. Only a perfect sphere would distribute the pressure equally. They built one out of titanium.
Gotta be fit to be a submariner.
Sometimes to go big means to go small.
Oh man, look at this.
The capsule is just big enough to fit a pilot and 1 passenger, and all the controls.
I feel like I'm sitting in like the first Apollo capsule.
You kind of are.
The dive is scheduled for tomorrow.
Primary mission planner New Zealander Rob McCallum, founder of IOS Expeditions, said no one had ever built a sub capable of more than 1 dive that deep.
Were there a lot of naysayers? Like, you're not going to be able to build this for more than 1 trip.
There would have been naysayers, but we purposefully kept the project confidential until we'd passed through sea trials.
Like deep-sea creatures themselves, the submersible had to work with the ocean's pressure, not fight it. Even though the titanium capsule is over 3 inches thick, its 2 hemispheres are almost fluid.
So they're not bolted together, they're not welded together. They're held together by a band, which allows the submersible to flex.
The same is true for the 3 viewports, which you might think would be the weakest points, but as Tim explains, they're designed to essentially get more waterproof the deeper you go.
So the windows, the viewports are just acrylic, so it's just plastic.
Seriously?
Very, very thick plastic. Yeah, and the fact that it's shaped in a cone so that as the pressure gets applied to the viewport, it actually seals more and more and more.
Think of it as a champagne cork in reverse.
CO2 scrubbers are going on.
The limiting factor is certified for depths more than 20% deeper than anything planet Earth has to offer. a margin of safety that Vescovo demanded.
Good to go.
And yet, until she was in the water, all bets were off.
When we first started testing the submersible, there were all sorts of little creaks, pings, pops, and of course, any sound like that when you're in a submersible that you're testing as a test pilot, it can be concerning. But
To say the least.
Most of the places he's taken her down to, no human eyes had ever seen. His first stop was the deepest part of the Atlantic, the Puerto Rico Trench.
What was that moment like for you?
it was just wonderful to be in one of the most remote places on the planet with a vehicle of my own construction and literally having a stick in my hand, being able to go wherever I wanted on the bottom of the ocean. Like a kid, I felt like I was 10 years old. It was great.
In the months afterward, the limiting factor did indeed reach the bottom of all 5 oceans, including several trips to the deepest of all, Challenger Deep, an abyss deeper than Mount Everest is tall.
Is this the time I tell you I've been a lifelong claustrophobic?
On this particular mission, in March of 2021, it was Rob and Tim's turn at the controls. And while they knew they weren't going to be the first to go that deep, well, they found a way to make history anyway.
And you hold the record for what?
For the deepest beer in history.
Turns out that depth-defying titanium sphere, down in the frigid waters of the deepest place on Earth, makes for a pretty good beer cooler, too.
The hard-earned thirst deserves the best cold beer. Served best at the bottom of the ocean.
It was a toast to ingenuity, to friendship, and to Victor Vescovo's childhood dream. A real-life Captain Nemo who built a machine that is the stuff of fantasy. Somewhere in the nether regions of the Pacific, I'm Lee Cowan for CBS Saturday Morning.
That was awesome.
It was. I tell you, I can't even imagine getting into that cockpit, if that's what you call it, right?
The vessel, I guess.
Vessel pit. But the idea of going down and not knowing how it goes back up would
You want to go,
freak me
Dana?
out completely.
What do you think?
I'm good.
Dana's-
I'll stay
How
on
about
Friday.
you?
Yes.
Yes.
Totally.
We'll have more from Lee's adventures, by the way, Thursday on CBS Mornings.